Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck, and we're here with so much fun this week. Mr. Matt Germain's here. I'm Mark Carbett. We're here, and you're here too, and we all know what's happening. That's right. It is the beginning of the World Series. Let's get started, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, you're giving us way too much credit, Mark, from the start. Like that we know what's happening. We don't know what's happening. We know the teams that are playing. We don't know what's happening. I know there was a lot of beer drank after the Blue Jays won their game, but that's about as far as I'll go.
I've so much wanted to see the Mariners there, man. You and I both, I think, because we were looking for them to be at their first World Series. Even if they didn't win it, we wanted to be able to see them get there. I mean, the Blue Jays have been there a few times, and anybody's facing the Dodgers, it's going to be a questionable series anyway, how it all plays out. I was really glad to see at least we have representation from the AL East with the Blue Jays there. So...
Right. So you got to think of it from so many angles in this case, Mark. Like, first of all, the Yankees. The Yankees didn't want the Blue Jays to win because they're the ones who booted them out. All those Yankee fans were probably booing the crap out of their TVs. And they didn't want the World Series to take place mostly in Canada, Mark.
Yeah.
So if it goes 7 games, most of the World Series games will be played in Canada. Within this political climate, that is a gold mine that brings up so many question marks. Oh, man.
Well, I hope that we get there. I mean, I hope it's that far into the series because last thing I want to see is another 4-0. That those things are boring to me. And man, I would absolutely love to see Toronto have it. I wonder if the Canadian president would welcome U.S. president to the final game of the World Series. Oh, and
the prime minister is not shy from inviting anyone to do business with and to have a couple of beers with, and I think he is a sports fan in general. Like, and he's done some shows. If you've ever paid attention at all of the politics up here.
If I paid attention, I'd say prime minister instead of president.
Yeah, it's all good. But I think the thing is they're just about to sign a trade deal on top of it, supposedly, right? There's rumors that on 3 or 4 different things they're trying to resolve. So my theory is, well, whatever one you haven't solved yet, stake it on the World Series. So you know what? If the Blue Jays win, it goes in Canada's favor. If the Dodgers win, it goes in the United States' favor.
Yeah. Okay, I have this image, and it's one I don't like the way things are going here and politically in the U.S. There's obviously really been no bones about me sharing that information, and I didn't like seeing the World Series team, being in front of, or any of the professional teams being in front of the president. All I can think is if a Canadian team wins the World Series, will they be invited to the White House?
Nope. They will be invited to the House of Commons in Canada or to meet the Prime Minister at his home. I don't know if he's moved into the same home where Justin Trudeau was staying because it was being renovated for a while. So I'm not exactly positive on where they would be invited, but definitely they'll make room for those guys. I think the Canada angle goes further than that, though, Mark, because Freddie Freeman is Canadian citizen. He has dual citizenship, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is Canadian citizen. You have a lot of differences between these two teams. So the Dodgers have 3 players from Japan, 1 from South Korea. Obviously, they're a West Coast team. They are centric that way. Everybody on the Blue Jays is either from North America or the Caribbean, except for 1 player, and he comes from Slovakia in Europe. So you've got these 2 kind of East Coast, West Coast, vibes between these 2 teams. And it's really intriguing that these 2 teams face off at a time when baseball has been looking for large markets to take a hold of the World Series to kind of amp up the ratings. And we're seeing the results that, that's bearing even without New York involved.
Well, I'm glad to see, like I said, Toronto there, and you're right. I was curious to see how all this would play out. I was looking at, let's see, was it Bet MGM? Anyway, because I like to go all about gambling, but it was interesting to see at the beginning of the season who they were picking to be at the World Series, and the top two teams they picked were the Dodgers. So that was, I think, the easy one to pick, and then they had the Yankees. After that, other teams they saw advancing were the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, the Astros, the Padres, the Rangers, the Red Sox, and the Orioles. And obviously, the only one, see what do we have? We did have the Phillies into that mix, and the Red Sox early on too. So, mm,
Yeah,
but
and the cool thing is too, you have the whole country of Canada watching. And I think I want to draw some attention to that because last year there was a whole thing about, oh, the Dodgers and the Yankees meeting up and it's going to be a ratings bonanza, right? Well, the ALCS beat the ratings of that World Series. So the Mariners and Blue Jays outdrew what happened in the World Series last year. So that tells you the power of an entire country being behind a team, right? And the attention that it draws. And I think when we start talking about expansion, MLB has to take note of that and say, you know what, adding another team in Canada just improves the chances we get the entire country involved in these playoffs and get better ratings as a result. So it shouldn't be overlooked that when you get a Canadian team involved, whether it's basketball, whether it's hockey or baseball, you're going to get significant ratings boosts because there's so many people that are focused in on it that are going to cheer on, even though it may not be their team in their region. They're going to just pile in there and bandwagon that team to cheer it on.
well, being part of baseball biz on deck, really need to I need to do my homework and find out a little bit more about the viewership as this advances through this World Series and see how much folks are paying for commercials in that. And it's interesting because coming up to the World Series, we've had to have a mix of places where we watch our games. FS1, HBO Max, different ones. And some of these you had to have cable, but these last ones are all on Fox. And I will be curious to see too how much more we may see of Canadian advertising that would appear across all the broadcasting that Fox is doing with this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. Sadly, because I'm in Canada, I've taken note that, even though you can pay the best package that you want to watch the Super Bowl in, you're never going to get the American ads. You're always going to get the Canadian ads that supersede whatever is being broadcast in the United States. So you never get the actual full package of what all regions see, or the majority of regions. You're just getting a snapshot of one particular region.
Well, that's a damn shame. And you and I have talked in the past. One time we'll have to get Craig Calcaterra back on here to talk about even being able to watch your team wherever you may live. So we'll see what 2026 is on that. But this year, I love it again that we're going to see Toronto Blue Jays there. And I would just absolutely love to see them take over and give the Dodgers holy heck and have a 7-game series. This, to me, that could be one of the most exciting MLB World Series we've had in years.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's really important that Blue Jays win one of the first two games. They can't go away from Toronto down 0-2 like they did against the Mariners. The Dodgers are never going to let off that gas pedal. And here's an interesting note. So Tyler Glasnow doesn't have great numbers in Toronto, right? And he's a little bit more of a hit and miss sort of playoff performer as well. Like he's had his struggles, he's had his outstanding performances. So which version are they going to get? Blake Snell's a little bit more of a sure thing, and as a lefty, I think he can attack the Blue Jays in different ways. But I took a look at the Blue Jays performances at the plate from July onwards, and they had 5 hitters within the top 30 in terms of isolated power from July onwards. And that really surprised me. Some of the names on there, like Ernie Clement, et cetera, like it was surprising that they had, that much clout from that point onwards and that many extra base hits. So the lineup in the Blue Jays, they always seem to have somebody that can kind of come through, have some power, and because they have enough power, they can attack some of those Dodgers pitchers that can be really dominant, but then just walk one guy, hit a batter, and then boom, there's a home run. Just like what we saw with George Springer, right? Where
Right.
where it just takes that one moment in time, that one bad inning or sequence, and then whammo, the Blue Jays have you. And because they're a good defensive team, they rarely make the mistakes that get them going on the other end. So it's hard when you're playing that kind of team to get the edge. And I know because we've watched the Rays do this enough times through the playoffs, through time, right? So it's a little similar to that mold.
Well, let's see here, Matt. Do you think it'll take 7 games to win this World Series?
I think, it depends a lot on how the Blue Jays play in LA. There's other angles to this. So you have a team in the Blue Jays that are 150% behind their manager. The love and the respect that they have for their manager right now, and how you see how motivated and passionate together as a group that is unlike something that I've seen in a long time in the playoffs. If they can go to LA and steal one or two of those games, it could be six. But if it goes the other way and they lose the first 3 games, let's say, you know, I that'll be a really hard thing for them to kind of swallow. So on the Dodgers side of things, you have guys like Teoscar Hernandez. Now, for anybody that doesn't realize, Teoscar Hernandez is the 12th highest hitting player in Blue Jays history. He knows that stadium very well. He knows the roster very well. He knows the players very well. He will be the scouting guy that they go to and get all the little dirt on Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and try to kind of get that going. On the other side, you have Bo Bichette. Apparently, he'll be returning from his injury. That's a huge boost to a
Yeah.
team like the Blue Jays, especially with the amount of lengthy at bats that he can provide to their lineup. And he's hit through his career extremely well, both in Rogers Center and in LA. So those are two big integral parts of each team that are going to matter a lot. I think the other thing you saw for the Blue Jays as they went through these playoffs is they don't really trust all of their pen. They've shown cracks in that mold and started using some of their starters as a result. So how much is that going to continue? Are they going to call on another guy that wasn't part of the ALCS roster that's a starter, but that they can use for longer term relief appearances? Scherzer and Bassett be asked to throw more innings or less innings? When are they going to be used? There's so many question marks with this. Like Max Scherzer has the book on the Dodgers. He can provide that to the Blue Jays, right? He's not shy about sharing that kind of information. So the numbers of stories when you start digging into things about these two teams, they're endless. Like you keep digging and finding more gems to kind of share.
Well, it would thinking about what it took for with the Mariners
Mhm.
and watching them, like to see some of the challenges they were having. And looking at Logan Gilbert, who this young pitcher who's done so well, and he suffered in the game with the Blue Jays. Um, it didn't, and I think the Mariners, correct me if I'm wrong, wound up playing some of their, what do I want to say, not their closers. They brought in some of the pitchers more often than you would have thought. I mean, maybe on 2 days rest or 3 days rest, they're bringing somebody back in, at least play an inning or two. And that says a lot about how that team's longevity would be if they had to get all the way to the World Series. It was amazing to me, and when you look at how they were struggling with their pitching with the Mariners. But so with the Blue Jays, I mean, it seems like the pen is still an issue there too, but you feel like they got a better handle on it? Or am I completely wrong on all that?
No. But I think that John Schneider stepped away from it and Dan really didn't. So it ended up hurting him. Like, for instance, if he had brought in a starter instead of Bizardo to go up against George Springer, does everything change?
Yeah.
So when you had Chris Bassett come in the game and you had Max Scherzer come in the game, like those are calls that were made because he knew, like Schneider made a decision that his pen was just too burnt and too exposed. They had seen him too much. That's what you could argue the same thing with Bizzardo. They had seen him enough that they could, time him and know how he's going to attack them. And when you have somebody like George Springer at the plate who has so much experience, having been with the Astros for so many
Oh,
years,
yeah.
his heart rate is low. He's able to focus, think, not get overly excited, and just wait for that pitch and mistake. And so Dan should have brought maybe somebody that's more of an unknown and provides more question marks for George to have to think about while he's there in that huge moment, right?
Hmm.
It's easier said than done, right? Because either way, you're throwing a little bit of caution to the wind. But and I would say that Dan hadn't been there before. Like John Schneider's been going through the ringer with the Blue Jays for a long time. He's gotten knocked out. He's gotten, the brunt of the media outrage, and they wanted him to be fired, and they wanted Shapiro to be
Yeah.
fired, and everybody wanted everybody to be fired, right? Well, when they got ousted, what was it in the wild card game? Again, they were expected to go through, right? And then boom, everybody wanted everybody out. So Dan Wilson got them to the game 7 of the ALCS. He has nothing to be ashamed of. There's a lot of growth with that team. Their pitching staff is still young and controlled, but it does show you, Mark. Everybody kept saying the Mariners need to trade pitching. They have too much of it. They need more hitters. And look what ended up, biting them in the back in the playoffs was still struggling, grinding to get those pitching innings through the playoffs. It's a grind. No matter how good you think you have it built, when you get to October, everybody's on fumes. And so you got to make sure that you have that fire in your heart to make the right call. And I don't want to bring it up again. Everybody knows the Rays side of it, but the Mariners are going to get another shot. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, Mark. You can speak to this. But when the camera was on Dan Wilson, he almost looked scared on occasions or doubting himself, or there was this fear in his eyes. And I don't know if it's just the way he looks. I don't know.
No, no, I saw it too. There was almost a sense of indecision, if you will, or
Right.
like, and
Yeah.
I thought, my gosh, man, you got to convey confidence with every moment with that team. If they see you showing a weakness, just like a lion with a pride behind them, you better show it because another lion's going to come and take your place. But right then and there, he needed to be able to exude nothing but confidence, and so the team would see it and to make a difference within his own headspace to make those decisions confidently.
Right. And I wanted to bring up the ratings again because to me, I like to provide hope. There's enough doom and gloom in the world today. So this is how it's shaping up right now, Mark, for the ALCS between the Mariners and the Blue Jays. They had 10 million viewers, okay, for the first game of that series. That's a 32% increase on the previous year. Okay. That's huge. Like 30% doesn't just happen easily. It's an impressive number. Overall, all of the playoffs so far, they're averaging 4.3 million viewers per game. That's a 30% increase over last year. So again, so it's not just one series, it's not just one team. It's overall, baseball seems to be attracting more eyeballs. Another notable game was the game 5, the ALDS, that drew 8.72 million. And that was the most watched ALDS game since 2011. So that's 14 years ago, right? It shows some excitement about the playoffs, which for baseball has been kind of a downhill slope for so long that seeing some positive momentum is encouraging and should be spoken about more so that we at least pat baseball on the back when they deserve it. And it had an added note that the Canadian audience contributed significantly to all of the numbers. It's one of those nice tip of the cap also to the country of Canada that kind of supports the game. And the game 7 of the ALCS was the most watched record-breaking viewership on Sportsnet and Sportsnet Plus, which brought in 11.8 million Canadians. If you know about the country, that's over 27% of Canadians are
Jeez.
glued to the TV watching baseball for that. So, that's pretty cool.
Wow. I can not only begin to imagine if we had 27% of the folks here in the U.S. watching the teams here, man, the value of something like that. Well, I
Right.
remember, was it the last time I would see Canada's team, and rightfully so, when some of the postseason games were coming up and they were talking about the Jays. I was just like, yes, that's it right now because there's no expansion. And this is Canada's team, the pride across an entire nation for one baseball team. And it's like, wow. And when they're playing, it's like any team when they're playing good, you've got even more fans. But that's fantastic to hear there's been that kind of participation. I'd like to
Yeah.
pick up that template and put it on down here.
Mark, that would be over 110 million Americans
Good
watching.
Lord. Probably
I
could
don't
afford a new stadium.
think you can get there.
Also, as long as we're talking about Toronto, and we may come back to the World Series here for a moment, but the Women's Professional Baseball League just announced the other day where they're going to have four cities that are starting. And not one of them is not, unfortunately, Toronto. However, one of the two owners, the two key people who are putting this Women's Professional Baseball League together, one of them is Keith Stan, who's from Toronto. And he's done a lot up there he's a businessman. The Women's Professional Baseball League, they're going to have their first four teams. And I was curious because I thought when they were going to do this, I thought they would stay geographically in one area, like maybe just the Northeast, with Boston and New York and a few other places. However, they have decided to have four cities, Boston and New York are part of it, but they're also having Los Angeles and San Francisco in their inaugural 2026 season, which I think is pretty neat that they're trying to put this together so quickly. They had tryouts earlier this year at the National Stadium. They had over 400 women coming and trying out over like a 3-day period. It was so difficult to try to make sure you gave everybody a fair shake, But anyway, they're going to be coming up with these four cities: Boston, Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco. So LA and San Francisco, there you're going to have them out there, obviously on the West Coast, and New York and Boston out here on the East. I am really curious to see how this plays out. And the thing of it is, too, Matt, when you're starting a new league like this, there has to be a bit of showmanship about it. So while you may see 400 great players out there, you may not pick the top ones for each of them. I don't know. I need to have them on the show and ask. But the thing of it is, you've also got to have somebody who's going to draw attention. You have to have somebody who already has a certain prestige or popularity out there. And I think we'll probably see a few of those players too. There's probably going to be a few from Asia and see maybe Australia, Canada. I don't know, but the whole thing I'm thinking is that all of these folks, it's going to be interesting to me to see how they work up a schedule and are able to get teams together to be able to try out, to practice, and to travel for that season. So once I have more on that, I will certainly share it.
So one of the things that comes to mind immediately is get yourself on TV some way, somehow, right? I don't care if it's YouTube, if it's getting a deal together with MLB TV, if it's something with MILB TV, if it's Amazon, if it's Apple, if it's whatever. The yes, there'll be people in the stands. There'll be things that are important like that, and that's definitely, the bulk of the income that they're going to make initially. But getting eyeballs on the game is what matters most. And I think you can relate back to the MLS, right? The MLS, even though it was just men's sports at first, and then eventually it grew to be, both sides of things. And they have a women's soccer league now that's professional, and we even have a team here in Halifax. You have to get eyes on the game. And until people can actually see it, and seeing is believing, and then you kind of, it becomes something that you'll see the highlights. There'll be a nice play, it'll replay it, they'll put it on TSN, they'll put it on ESPN, they'll put whatever, like there'll be things that come up that happen, which become a focal point that they can then, tell others. They until they do that, they can't get that big name that you're talking about that they need to get to draw people to the park. I think the one thing that they could do is lean more on entertainment side of things as well. So in some way, shape, or form, having some sort of entertainment factor included in some of their games or performances. I don't know what that is. I can't speak to that. I keep thinking of bands of I don't know. I don't know
Well, we're
exactly.
going to have to get them on here to share some of that with us because I'd really like to hear more about that. I know one of the people they really spotlight right now is Monet Davis.
Mhm.
And she was like such a star when she early on, but she played a lot with baseball. She was doing some with softball, and now she's back with this. She's a person that a lot of people recognize and a lot of talent, and we'll see, how this works out for her and others as well. I'm not sure. I know we were talking at one point, Kelsey Whitmore. She'd
Mhm.
been so fantastic, and she's been playing with the Bananas a while back. I don't know if she's actually going to be with the Women's Professional Baseball League, but she's done a lot to help promote it over the last several months. So there's a lot of good folks out there, and I'm really curious to see how it all plays out.
I want
But
to.
you got a good team to start with anyway. You got a good team as far as putting this together. You had Justine Siegel, who's been working for years with Baseball for All and has done so much to promote women in baseball. She's had, tournaments across the U.S. and elsewhere and bringing all these women in. We've even had the Florida Boats on here in the past, and they were one of the women's teams who've gone to some of those Baseball for All tournaments. And then, like I said, you got Keith Stan out of Toronto. I think with strong people like that, we're going to see success come from this organization. People want this. There's a lot of people you're going to see out there promoting, even like Billie Jean King. You look at the legend of Maybelle Blair. She's going to be out there as well. There are a lot of folks who want this to succeed. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I think great things to come. What can I say?
Do you think that there should be intersport promotion? So hear me out for a second. So I remember as a kid, right? Um, Commercials going on with Wayne Gretzky and Michael Jordan, or Bo Jackson and Michael Jordan, or there was an intersport, promotion factor going on in those marketings that helped all sports, kind of gain some respect, notoriety, et cetera, and to amp things up for those games. So if you have the WNBA that's already taken off, and you have women's soccer that's taking off, and you have like there should be some cross promotion factor to those leagues, because I think the stronger they are as a whole, the more mix of fans you're going to get that want to support all the different types of sports that women are a part of. So I think that's a really beneficial thing that promotes not only the sport for, let's say you do the WNBA and you get some of their biggest talents to go and kind of be part of commercials or events. You could do the vice versa when they have the baseball leagues going on. It just
Well, and I mean, it can be
more aware.
simple things too, man. I mean, the other day, Vladdy, when he came in, he was wearing what a jersey, a Austin Matthews jersey from the Leafs, and I said it was a simple thing, but it's showing kind of a cross support between sports. And there's those little moments there, or you see maybe three or four people from the National Hockey League sitting there in the stands during a game, during one Major League Baseball game, and the simple things like that, that makes a difference. Or you and I talk time and again about having more of the sports players doing commercials and promotions. They should be doing some of those together across one another. I mean,
Mhm.
could you imagine, say, Tom Brady and Derek Jeter doing a spot together,
Mhm.
but actually working with a few stars from who are alive out there now that are up and coming. And those are the sort of things, whether sometimes a charity event or whatever, those are the sort of things I think that will help when you look at trying to blend sports and build something together.
So would you believe me if I said that I'm watching baseball right now?
No, what are you watching?
The the Dominican Winter League.
Ah,
Yeah. So a lot of names that you forget about sometimes. But I'd like to bring up one name on there that I'm watching right now that's, an interesting guy this winter. It's Nick Castellanos.
Oh yeah.
He's playing and he's 2 for 2 and he's got a home run and a double. Or sorry, just a double. And so, you see a lot of these guys that are pending free agents being dangled, are talked about possibly being released. And so they show up a lot of times down in the winter leagues. And, Churio's another guy, another big name that's down there, and he's playing tonight. Um, you remember Tori Alba, the catcher? He's playing there, but he's actually at second base. Um, Gabriel Arias, Franklin Barreto. There's a lot of guys that you recognize the name and you're wondering, whether or not they're ever going to get another chance at the major league level or not. So it's fun to watch those winter leagues because of that. And there's also the Mexican Winter League that's actually started as well. And there's a whole bunch of other names that are included on that in that league. I think Jonathan Aranda used to play in that league,
Yep.
every year, and so did Randy Arozarena um, for a few years. But I'm not sure if he's taken part in it this year.
I don't know. I mean, Randy's has made that his home country. So, yeah, would almost be surprised if he wasn't playing there this year.
Right. And there is one Rays player playing tonight. It's second baseman Jader Arenamo.
You got me on that one, brother. I don't remember that name.
He's the guy that they got from Milwaukee. He's a second baseman. He's going to be playing in Double A probably next year, and so he's getting some winter league time. Which I know you've heard me say this a lot this year, Mark, but it's one of those things that I promote heavily that more players do. And he's the player that the Rays got in return for Danny Jansen at the deadline. So he's putting in the extra work. I appreciate that. I tip my hat to it. And I still think that the Rays need to do that with a heck of a lot more of their lackluster hitters. So it's
Wow.
nice to see.
Well, here I was thinking there's no more baseball. And but as you were talking about crossover, we got the sports equinox here coming up, my friend.
Mhm.
And that day when we see the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and NHL all playing one game, and that's going to be coming up on Monday. I think it's 8:15. We're going to see a kickoff in Kansas City, and then let's see. There's going to be a first round of action in let's see, the NFL will be the Washington Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs. The NBA is going to have the Cleveland Cavaliers and Detroit Pistons. Also, I think, let's see who else we got on here. Magic, the Orlando Magic and Philadelphia 76ers, the Atlanta Hawks and Chicago Bulls, Brooklyn Nets and Houston Rockets, Boston Celtics and New Orleans Pelicans, Toronto Raptors and San Antonio Spurs. Who else? We're looking at Oklahoma City Thunder and the Dallas Mavericks, Phoenix Suns and Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves, Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors. My gosh. Then you get the MLB. And of course, we've got what's going on with the World Series. NHL, you got St. Louis Blues and Pittsburgh Penguins, the Boston Bruins at Ottawa Senators, excuse me. So we're talking a full day of sports there, boys and girls. So get your lineup there. Make sure you got all your channels queued up and enjoy that day.
That's that, it's one of those days you hope you have a remote and a lot of popcorn and maybe a pizza on the on the side because you could be sitting down and watching a heck of a lot of good sports. Um, but I always say there's a little bit of overload around that time of year too, that kind of you want to digest it all, but you're going to miss something. And you're like, oh, you can only have so many screens and going at the same time. And I think it's one of the joys, I guess, of being a sports fan is that you get a little bit of choice, which is not always the case year round. So you take it when you can get it.
Yeah, I think sports bars ought to be doing pretty well that day. I know. I keep thinking of that show, Sherlock Holmes Elementary. And in
Yeah.
his house, he's got like 12 different screens at least going all at the same time. And he's constantly watching them. And, you could ask him anything about what was happening on any screen, and he could give you in detail whatever it was about. It was always like, okay, that's the way to enjoy sports.
Are you saying Karen hasn't set you up with 5 screens? Is that what?
Oh gosh, no, 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 no,
Uh,
no.
no, I remember, Mark, the first time I went to Baltimore, I ended up going to the ESPN zone. And you walk in there and they sit you down in these lazy boys. You've got the speakers behind your ears, you've got these remotes, and you've got this wall of screens, all sizes, and you get to pick whichever one you want to listen to. I sat down there and I was just looking up, and my buddy looks at me, he goes, I don't think we're ever gonna leave. I said, I think you're right. We need to get a
Sports
picture.
paradise.
Yeah, that's right. But
Oh,
yeah, I wanted to add actually the names from the Winter Leagues. I know you'll appreciate this. In the Mexican Winter League, one of your old friends, Harold Ramirez, is playing, and and so it's fun to see some of those guys still kicking at it, still trying to get back into it. And there's another ex-race called Bly Madris, who's still trying to get back at it as well. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there because I remember Harold was one of your favorites while he was still with the Rays, and it seems like yesterday that he was a big part of the team. So thought I'd throw it out there.
I'm glad that I was. Yeah, you're right. I always did like Harold, man. I hated to see him go. There's a lot of guys we hate to see leave, but he was certainly one of them. He always seemed like a humble fella.
Mhm.
But wow, you've been chatting up a bit on Blue Sky about what you see as the future of the Rays
Mm.
and folks who may be coming or going. Do you want to share any of that with us today?
Yeah, I think there's enough smoke to start saying that Yandy Diaz has been spoken about in trade, and I heard that at the deadline as well, and they didn't move him. I think part of it was because they were still competitive, and they saw themselves as such, and they made a kind of investment in their pitching that pointed to that a little bit. So they were kind of on the fence as to whether or not they wanted, but also they weren't getting the prices that they wanted. And I think now when you're reading the tea leaves and you're seeing Pete Alonso walk away from the Mets, and you're seeing the Padres being extremely disappointed from their first base production and seemingly ready to move on from Luis Arraez. When you have those kinds of teams that want a limited risk but also assured performances, it makes somebody like Yandy Diaz very attractive, right?
Oh yeah.
Because what you're looking at is, okay, do I sign Josh Naylor for 3 or 4 years and give him, 15 million per year? So then you're talking 60 million, or do I just take on the 12 million that Yandy Diaz is owed? And then decide on an option. They have the brilliance of the Rays extension with Yandy Diaz was adding that option that kicks in 2027. So the team that gets him is getting 2 years of control of a prime player who just showed he can actually hit for power, not just for average. So the Mets and the Padres, which are two very desperate teams to me, make it hard. And the other ingredient in there is that both of them have very high-end catching prospects that the Rays probably would love to pry. They're also not shy about dealing their prospects at all. So I think Eric Neander is going to take advantage of that a little bit. The other team that I thought of doesn't make sense. It would need a third team, so that was the St. Louis Cards. But they have a lot of prospects the Rays would probably be interested in. So if there was a three-way deal of sorts, including the Mets or Padres, that could be worked out, I think that would work. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see the Rays decide after that to sign somebody like Josh Naylor. Why not? If you trade Yandy Diaz for a package of players and you sign Josh Naylor, are you worse for wear? Like you're still a very competitive team. And the reason that you still sign somebody like Josh Naylor is because you still can shift Jonathan Aranda to second base and
Right.
and still move on from Brandon Lau if you choose to do that. And once you've dealt Yandy Diaz, it just seems more likely to me that you would move Brandon Lau. And with his back and aging, he's going to be 32 next year.
Wow.
He's going to, going back into the trop on turf to me is not a good idea. So he'd be better off. Now for him, I think teams like the San Francisco Giants playing right beside Willie Adames again, that's a perfect spot. And honestly, I think he would do really well out there, even though it's not ideal for a lefty to hit home runs in San Francisco. He's one of those guys that has the power to get it over the fence over there. So I think in his case, the short time frame of his contract remaining, the only way that I think he stays with the Rays beyond this offseason is if he signs an extension. So if he's really settled, he doesn't want to move anywhere, he wants to just add a year and an option or something like that, and the Rays are happy to keep him around, maybe they do that. And then he becomes their primary DH and still allows somebody else to take over second base. So in that case, you don't really care what the turf is doing, right? But the last one is Pete Fairbanks. Now, I did some calculations on his wicked incentives. And when he structured his contract, it was brilliant because he's going to end up, even though his option's only 7 million, he gets 5 million in bonuses based on what's taken place between 2023 and 2025. So his option is really 12 million. I don't see for 1 second a Rays keep paying $12 million for any reliever, never
No.
mind Pete Fairbanks. And I think that's why they brought in Griffin Jacks. So, it's just a matter of which teams are going to be most desperate to bring him in. I think the Atlanta Braves are one of those teams that could have interest. And if they make the right moves in other places, they would be happy to bring in somebody, even with the injury risk. They've never been shy about bringing in guys with injury risk. So, anyways, those three guys, I think, even though they were kept at the deadline, I think this is the time now for Eric Neander and the Rays to maximize on that, reinvest some of that money in other locations. So primarily right field and catcher. I just don't think that they're going to find a catcher that's being paid right now. And they're not going to want to sign an old guy like JT Realmuto to a big deal. So that's why I point to Josh Naylor and potentially one outfielder that they could bring in, or they could deal all three and just sign Kyle Tucker. But I honestly think that the market is going to be so insane for Kyle Tucker that the Rays aren't really going to be playing for that level.
Right. Yeah, no, I always say I'd like to have the homeboys here, but I recognize, that, of course, whether it be Pete, Alonso, or Kyle, that we're not going to be ponying up that kind of cash. And
Mhm.
if we even need somebody like Pete because of all the strength we've had between DHs and first base. Oh, brother. Well, I haven't got much else. How about you?
I want to talk about meritocracy.
Please do.
So a while back, like we were talking, you and I, about the page on diversity in MLB.com. It's their inclusion page, is what it was called. And there wasn't any changes at that time that were made. But if you go back to that page now and you scroll to the bottom, the amount that everything has been shortened and kind of cleaned or cleansed is the best way that I would put it. So it has some things at the top which are very generic, very fine. It says, our pillars are our people, our culture, our community, right? But there's nothing said in there at all about any sort of diversity whatsoever.
Jeez.
And where it used to have it was in the talent portion and in the business portion and in the brand portion, which is just below that. And instead, what they have in there in the talent, it says an inclusive meritocracy.
Oh, Lord.
And that's what they added, Mark. So
Oh,
for
God.
anybody that doesn't know what I even hate saying the word meritocracy, right? That means that the economic good or political power are vested in the individuals or people based on ability and talent rather than wealth or social class, or you can say in this case, or diversity, right? So it marks a shift. And so I just wanted to bring light to it a little bit because there's a lot of that going on everywhere. There's a lot of blending of what used to be things that kind of were meant to address um, issues that were overlooked or stepped on for many generations. And so I'm kind of mixed on this, Mark. Okay. So I'm like, okay, if you want to tell me that the best person gets the job, that's fine. Like that's anybody that runs a business would want to run it that way.
Yeah.
What you don't want to have happen is that nobody ever is willing to look at who has been hired and kind of discern some patterns that point to exclusions, right? And so who does the rating? How do they do the rating? How does how do people feel represented in that sport, in that work environment? That's where the loss ends up being, is if you don't see yourself represented in anything, then generally speaking, you're going to feel like you're not really being welcomed into that environment.
Well, and you bring up a good point. And I know toward the beginning of the year had some concerns. Even the Department of Defense had taken down Jackie Robinson's military career as far as posting it on there. It's that bad. I mean, right now though, I'm looking at MLB.com/Dodgers/community/diversity-equity-inclusion. And there is a page for that. But the thing of it is, unless you're looking for that specifically, I don't think you're just going to jump out and bite you. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about looking at it from the MLB site itself instead of trickling down. I mean, here on the page it says in big letters, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the mission of that. But it shouldn't be just one page buried somewhere. It should be a thread that runs throughout all of the Major League Baseball sites, and certainly through the corporate one, that has to be able to show, including all these folks. And yes, a player should be judged on their talent, but not at the exclusion of bringing other people up. And that is where the problem becomes, as far as I'm concerned, is you have to be able to recruit people from a diverse pool of talent. If you keep going to the same pool of talent, you're just going to weaken your organization in the first place, because you're going to be looking at the same methods and practices and not learning anything new and not giving other people an opportunity.
It's called groupthink, and it's a real problem in a lot of different businesses and areas of employment. And so the MLB.com thing also points to that whole, I do want to tip my cap to some parts of their site. Like there's other parts that are more, still haven't been altered is the best way to put it. And so we'll see what happens over time, but I wanted to bring light to it because I do think it's good to monitor these things and see what direction or trend they're going in towards. So hopefully people aren't being left out that shouldn't be. And meritocracy is not an evil word per se. It's just one of those that kind of goes backwards based on what was trying to get addressed by what was in place before. So maybe there was just a length of time that needed to be in, and now we're moving on, and then, we'll see how that goes. And if anything needs to get fixed after that, we'll readjust.
Because we don't need exclusionary crap going on. That's what something like that actually starts out with. So I'm glad you brought that up. And the thing of it is too, sometimes, Matt, when I see this today, I think what's that old game they play in the street, 5-card Monte, where they, and I think that's whatever the the vile thing that's happening today, they keep moving around the cards and, either disappeared or you don't see it again. What happened? So some of these pages, some of the events that are happening, Epstein, and sometimes they get lost in the middle of everything else.
I've never heard that name before.
And you soon won't, because we've got the aliens. We're going to have the special records that Pam Bonnie's going to put out. We'll know what's going on with all the aliens out there in Arizona. And once we get that done, maybe we can talk about the other stuff later on. Anyway.
Sounds like a plan, Mark. I look forward to that conversation. I think the next time we talk, we should wear alien hats and costumes and speak our natural language from the planet we came from, Mark.
I'd like that, my friend. I like that a lot. All righty. Well, thanks again, buddy. I appreciate it. We're going to thank all of you all. I hope you're enjoying the World Series this year. Hope your team wins if they are the Blue Jays. And if not, well, shame on you. We're glad to have you join us here once again. Matt, any final words?
I'll even say it. Go Jays.
Go Jays.
I'm with you.
All righty. Until next week, folks, and we'll talk with you then.
Just a reminder, you can find Matt at matgermain.bsky social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.
Go Jays.